welcome back to this month's episode of B2B Outbound with me, Chris, and I'm joined today by Kenny Anderson. Today, we're going to delve into the wonderful topic of insight, intelligence, and intent data. I'm joined by Kenny. Kenny is the newly appointed Chief Commercial Officer over here at Punch, but has a background in client services, strategy, and product development. So, Kenny, welcome to the pod. I'm excited to have you here, and why don't you give everyone a quick overview of your background, what led you to get here?
Yeah, sure. Well, number one, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited about that. And, very excited to now be part of the Punch family, coming from the Kronos agency, where I've been for the last, I guess, better part of 4 years before the merger or acquisition between Kronos and Punch. I'm really looking forward to being able to leverage not only what Kronos has done from an account-based marketing focused agency, but my specific background. As you said, it's largely mostly in product management, which is kind of how I moved into marketing, which was never my career plan, or at least I thought.
I used to be a musician, and I never ended up here. I ended up here, so life's a funny thing.
Yeah, it's the path that lays before us is always an interesting and winding one. But yeah, I came from engineering. My first job out of college was with IBM designing token ring Ethernet adapter microchips, and then I went back to school for biomedical engineering. That's how I got into the medical device world for about 16 or 18 years. Product management, marketing, and then I guess it was about 8 or 9 years ago when I joined up with a startup thermoelectrics company focusing on their life science business, where I was introduced to account-based marketing, and that's where I met two of the original co-founders of Kronos, Mick Wilcox, the former CEO, and Daniel Engelbretson, who was the director of marketing at the time. And I just loved the way it matched up with the things that I thought about from a product management standpoint. A really detailed understanding of the market problems, the unmet needs. Not only does that guide your product requirements and your product roadmap, those are exactly the same relevant topics that should guide your messaging and your positioning and your whole go-to-market plan. So it matched up really well. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of leveraging the things that I've learned along the way, and I know I'm going to be learning a lot of new things as part of Punch, so I'm really excited about that.
It's been a fun few months already, so excited to see where we take it. But I guess that brings us on to today's topic. Is all right, intent, and I guess more so, the part intent can play within the sales process and that handover from ABM to sales or digital to sales. And I think you're apt to speak about this because you mentioned been doing ABM for a long time. Digital sales signals, data-driven programs. I guess I'm a big believer that nowadays salespeople absolutely have to be using insight or intent in their outreach. But I guess let's take it a step back. And we're all talking about it, but what even is intent in your mind? And what is intent, and what are the various bits that we're missing?
Yeah, well, and I'll try to kind of speak to it beyond just an account-based marketing perspective, because if you do just look at it through that ABM lens, you're trying to drive some of those intent signals and some of that intent data so that you can follow. But just kind of broadly speaking, intent data is essentially the digital signals that people leave behind, right, that indicate interest in a product or a service. It's not just about like a website visit. It's truly about patterns of behavior, like repeatedly visiting the pricing page, or how much are they consuming case studies, or which content are they engaging with that suggests that they are maybe in the market for a solution, maybe they're just researching, depending on where they are in their journey. But I think the key, the way I've always thought about it, is trying to identify the high quality intent signals that matter the most and kind of filter out the noise, so that you're kind of focused on that buying intent, particularly from a sales perspective, as you bring sales into the fold.
A lot of salespeople are always focused on, I guess, what we call third-party intent. So I don't want to say surface level, but let's look over LinkedIn or the internet and where mergers or acquisitions or senior leadership changes or new product launch or whatever else, and that's great to personalize it at a certain level. But there's obviously also own data and what we call first-party and second-party intent. Like, is one more valuable than the other, or the different categories and how you should use them?
Yeah, I think it is about how you use them. I don't know that you necessarily favor one over the other. I think the third party signals that you can get, I mean, you can utilize that in a lot of different ways. Even when you're laying out your go to market strategy and you're really trying to, figure out or maybe really dial in your ICP, not on your, total addressable market, but a total relevant market. Um,
Mm.
you can leverage some of those signals to kind of inform even those early strategic decisions. But I mean, certainly it gives you the opportunity to start getting an idea of who might be starting their research and who might be starting their thinking about coming into market. I don't typically think of it as those are the real high priority buying signals. That's where I really want to get pretty acute on looking at how are they engaging with our intent, how are they, or our content rather, how are they engaging with our website. So
Yeah.
I do think about them quite differently, but they both have their role.
Yeah, and I think again, there's a big piece of the puzzle missing that I often see is, and a lot of the work we do, particularly at Punch, is building that your own first party intent, what we call pipeline nurture activity. Because ultimately, sales signals are great, but it doesn't mean that doesn't mean they're ready to buy. But actually, if you can, for every 100 conversations we're going to have in a month with a prospect by going outbound or doing lead gen activities, we're going to start building our own database, our own insight, our own intelligence of contract renewal dates and product funding, all those sort of things. Which we know if you can work your own data really well, it probably, I would say, outperforms surface level intent from what everyone else is using. So that's a big part of it. I think, Kenny, one of the things you just mentioned a minute ago, which I'm keen to come back to, I guess, in your experience, like how accurate is intent data? Like in terms of actually predicting, is a prospect in market ready to buy?
I mean, I feel intent data can be highly accurate when used properly, right? But I think a lot of people do probably misunderstand it, or kind of think of it as a magic bullet. Conversations that I've had with a lot of marketing, sales and marketing, go to market people, the most common mistake that gets talked about is assuming that any engagement at all is a buying signal. So like,
Yeah.
downloading a white paper, or hey, they watched a recording of a webinar. That does not mean they're ready to buy, right? It means that they're researching. And the accuracy, I think, starts to improve when over time, and I think I mentioned this, it's the behavioral patterns, right? So if you look at those patterns over time and you kind of start to combine multiple signals from multiple perspectives, that's where it really starts to become extremely valuable. So I think it's super important to be kind of mindful of the building awareness and the educating. That's really the majority of the people that are in your total addressable or total relevant market. It's yeah, the numbers I've seen mostly, it's really never more than about 7% that are active buying, that are actively in markets.
I'll be very interested in this next point based on your background with strategic APM, and we all know about one to one, one to few, one to many, and the various use cases for personalization and content and digital and everything else. But I guess when it comes to intent, do you have a view on the more research led approach, like research driven, intent driven approach versus, I say, the mass scale approach, cold prospecting methods or traditional prospecting methods? Is one better than the other, or?
They both have their role. So I think it depends on how you kind of view it and what you're trying to achieve. A more research driven approach of where you're using intent data is where it's superior, and is when it's executed well because you're targeting people who are already in market or very soon to be in market, right? It's more efficient, it helps you prioritize. But cold prospecting certainly still has its place, especially if you're doing it thoughtfully, which I think is critical. Obviously, one of the keys there is personalization. But cold outreach still works really well if it's targeted and if it's relevant. I think those are the key aspects of it. But when you have intent data guiding your efforts, you kind of focus on that quality over quantity. It's not really about ditching one for the other. I think it's about leveraging the best tool for each scenario.
I think one of the things we find is probably, and again, this is personal preference opposed to best practice or whatever else, but we're more to reach a wider audience because there's only a small percentage of the audience in market right now. To reach a wider audience, cast the net slightly wider. Once you start having conversations and generating interest and people will start moving into the deal stage, funnel and pipeline, then actually leverage more personalization, more intent, more insights to kind of develop those conversations with relationships. Because we all know, again, an in with a company is great, but most companies 6, 9, 12-month sales cycles. So the more we can leverage more insight, more intent, who's involved during that sales cycle, in my opinion, the better. So rather than kind of doing too much up front, and again, people spend, reading annual reports, reading research reports, reading, proposition decks, and then reach out to the prospect and they go, we're not in market, we're not ready to buy. And you're like, well, that was a lot of wasted effort, I guess. So
Right.
yeah, there's that trade-off, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, a certain element of that is okay because it's all right. You're not in market right now, and you can still get valuable information out of knowing. All right, well, are they not in market because they're locked into a contract? Oh, well, when does that contract expire? Like you can start to get some good intel, and you may not have reached out or may not have had that conversation with that prospect or that account if you weren't following some intent signals. So I think that there's different layers of value, and again, I think it kind of comes back to which one is best for different scenarios and how you use it.
Yeah. Do you find is there a risk of, if you focus so much on intent data, because everyone's talking about intent and there's Sixth Sense and Bon, there's all these tools popping up all over the place and everyone wants it. But do you risk, if you focus so much on it, you actually miss out on some of those people who aren't in market right now, or who are in market even but aren't showing intent?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if that's all you're focusing on, you're only focusing on the people that are actively showing intent. I think you definitely miss out on a much larger audience who are in that early research stage. So that's why I feel like it. And this kind of comes a little bit from the account-based marketing perspective that I've been firmly entrenched in for the last several years. But I mean that's why it's important to kind of balance demand capture with demand creation, right? You want to make sure that you're building awareness and educating the market, even if they're not ready to buy, which again is 90 to 95% of your total relevant market. So, get that benefit, create that demand first, and the intent will follow. You can't ignore the top of the funnel, right? That means leaving potential customers out of your orbit, and that's not something you want to do. So yeah, I think it's a risk of where if you become overly reliant and completely focused on just intent data, you're going to miss a lot.
Yeah, agreed. I think you're absolutely right. I think again, I'm a big advocate of getting meetings, building traction, building conversations is great, but all the stuff, all the insights and intelligence from just going out and having conversations that people aren't in market right now, but you're starting to build a good picture of what competitors they're using, when their budgets get renewed, what their digital transformation plans are next year. Having that in-house in your CRM is hugely valuable if it's worked and nurtured in the right way. And obviously, where's the line of kind of too personalized or the ethical line of using intent and making that outreach personalized?
The way that I've always kind of thought about the ethical consideration is just just try to have transparency. Really try to be transparent. I think we're in a day and age now where I think a lot of the technology and its capabilities are still viewed as a little bit creepy, if you will. But almost everybody's aware of what the technology is capable of. And people don't want to feel like they're being spied on. So, in general, you want to use not just intent data, but you want to use all of your go-to-market motions to offer value, not to manipulate, right? So I think the way to kind of draw that line, I've always tried to approach it this way, is ask yourself, is this in the buyer's best interest?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, well, then maybe you're pushing too hard, or maybe you're exploiting data just a little bit too much, and you're crossing a line there. Often I've seen success where sales and marketing professionals have been, they've owned it. Hey, I saw you downloaded this, or I saw that you viewed this. But then they position it, instead of trying to sell their solution, they'll position it as, hey, if there's anything that I can do to kind of help your research process, help speed it up, even if that means excluding us as a possible option, let me know. Buyers value that.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a campaign years ago at Punch where the message was around growth and vitality, and rather, like you said, some swag rocking up, we got a 6 foot orange tree to rock up at everyone's office, and it made a big impact. But it was on brand, it was on message, and everything else.
Yeah.
And do you find, obviously, particularly with your the Kronos background and your background particularly, and the Kronos team, obviously a lot of it was around how can you drive signals digitally using account-based advertising and the CRMs and systems. Is intent started to be too automated within kind of the sales marketing outreach in terms of how do you get across that human element opposed to this is a personalized intent-led email, but you can kind of clearly see that actually I had one the other day that said, "Hey Chris, I noticed you're in London, so am I." Like, that's pretty poor personalization and pretty poor intent
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a risk of over automation. The key, I think, is going to be you should use the data to inform your personalization, not try to replace it.
Yeah.
Like the intent data should make your outreach smarter, better. But I feel you still need to have that human element, inject that human element of it. Because without it, it doesn't. You want it to feel organic. It needs to be relevant. It needs to be, driving a value-driven conversation. But I also think that you want to be able to. You're trying to build that trust, right? And you're trying to come across as genuine, and you're trying to demonstrate the empathy. If you really know your market, you know whether it's the user persona or the buyer persona or some other adjacent persona, you know the pain points, you know the market problems that you've leveraged to try and guide the development of whatever your product or your service or your offering is. So you want to be able to kind of demonstrate that you have that empathy. And if it doesn't come across as a genuine kind of, without that human element, then it really falls flat and it's a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think interesting what you just said. Knowing when to use it's really important. So just because you've got it, I think again a lot of people fall into the trap of we've got intent, let's use it. But actually, is it going to add anything to that conversation? Is it going to add anything to this outreach? And if the answer is no, I'd probably err on the side of let's not do it. Just there's no point congratulating them on a new job if everyone's done it already and it's completely swamped in the marketplace or anything else. And actually, they're 3 months into the job or 6 months into the job. It's kind of let's try and find stuff that's going to provide value, or you can leverage your proposition across. So, hey, I noticed your annual report said about this challenge. Fun enough, one of the things we do to solve that is X, Y, and Z, and it makes it a lot more of a interesting conversation and more personalized approach.
Even in that scenario, though, like if they had been promoted or they moved to a new job and it's been 3 months, 4 months, maybe even 6 months. I mean, even like just being straightforward and acknowledging that, hey, I missed that. I didn't realize you moved to, from company X to company Y. That comes across as very organic and very human, not automated. So I mean, that's just kind of how I think about it. In terms of, that the automation can inform it, but the more that you can still incorporate that human element.
Yeah, and I particularly like what you said then around, hey, I missed that. I didn't realise I'm owning up to it, personalised, opposed to these kind of...
very human, right?
Opposed to these kind of AI-generated... There's obviously a lot of AI-generated email cadencing tools at the moment, and they would still pick up, congratulations on your new role as a standard, standard message, when actually you're like, it's 3, 6, 9 months into it. Is that really the best message? So
that automated message, like the day after I post it, that's going to fall flat compared to somebody reaching out to me 6 months later.
Yeah, like you said, you've got to be using a data-driven approach nowadays, in my mind, to stand out. But has that impacted the sales funnel in terms of, are certain stages more or less important now because of intent and data and insights?
My initial reaction to that is probably not. I don't think it's dramatically changed it. I don't think it's made, a certain stage more or less important. I think by and large, I think they still, kind of maintain their level of importance. I think that the intent data helps you optimize the traditional funnel, right? It doesn't necessarily make any stage less important. It allows you to kind of streamline, I guess, the early stages by gives you the opportunity to focus efforts on those that, hey, these look like they're already in market, so let's let's streamline. We can be more efficient, be a little bit more focused on what we think the conversation with somebody who's at that point, the type of conversation they would want to have, where, more top of funnel is a little bit, as we were talking about earlier, it's a little bit more on building awareness and creating demand rather than capturing demand.
Yeah.
So I think it just informs it. I think it just optimizes it. I don't necessarily think it suddenly changes the importance of one particular stage of the sales cycle or the funnel.
Nice. Yeah, 100% agree. And yeah, they're really interesting. I think we could talk for ages on this, but this has been fascinating, Kenny. I think I've really enjoyed this conversation around intent, insight, and intelligence. I guess just to summarize, what are your three key takeaways, three hottest points when it comes to intent?
I think the top three in my mind anyway would be like number one, try to focus as much on those buying intent signals over what is probably more, just mere interest or research. Secondly, we talked about this, but it's intent is not a magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
It's a tool to help you really prioritize prospects who are showing that higher intent. And then I guess the third takeaway is kind of building off the back of that if you're thinking about it as a way to prioritize prospects, it really allows your sales and marketing efforts to be way more efficient, particularly on the sales side. To be able to kind of have a really good understanding of, all right, who do I need to reach out to today? Who's starting to show, a high level of patterns of behavior. We talked about that is starting to indicate they're looking for a solution. They're serious. If they're not in market, they're about to be. And then sales can really kind of focus their efforts there, while marketing can kind of focus on the more top, middle of funnel, driving the awareness and creating demand versus the capture of demand. Those would be the three that I'd focus on.
Much. Yeah, thanks for joining us today, Kenny. Obviously, insight, intelligence, data, intent. It's all a fascinating topic, and I think there's some nuggets there for people to enjoy. What's the next 3 months look like for you? What you're excited about on your new role?
I'm probably most excited about being able to kind of leverage similar to intent data, but multiple other channels and aspects of marketing signals. Being able to try and leverage that, leverage the signals and the prioritization to make B2B sales development a lot more effective, a lot more efficient.
Nice.
And I think there's all kinds of tech and tools that, from a sales development perspective, that Punch has been using or evaluating or incorporating. That I'm looking forward to learning some of that because it seems really cool. I think the future of go-to-market and sales marketing and B2B sales development specifically through the lens of Punch, it's really exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to learning a lot.
Nice. It's gonna be a fun ride. It's gonna be a
Yeah,
fun journey. So
and hopefully,
nice. And if anyone has any more questions on intent or wants to learn a bit more about what it is we're up through from a sales signals and intent point of view, where can they find you? Kind of LinkedIn or where do you hang out?
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I haven't been great about keeping my profile updated. I need to go in and update it. I've been a little bit too busy, but yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Certainly, people can find me there. Yeah, I welcome anybody who wants to engage in a conversation. I learn so much from others who know a heck of a lot more about these topics than I do. So yeah, I welcome the opportunity to engage in any conversation.
Amazing. Thanks, Kenny. Appreciate it. And that's the pod.
Yeah, great. Hopefully, you'll have me back at some point in the future.
Yeah, it'll be good. You'll be in the other seat soon. Don't worry.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chris.